Afternoon, my friends. This video, I just wanted to talk a little bit on the subject of not always being able to trust yourself and your mind. And so when I brought this question up first in my head, the first thing I thought about was, have you guys ever seen that meme of like the guy holding the gun and then there's another guy behind him and it's the same dude, and the caption says, "Trust nobody, not even yourself." Every time a subject like this comes up, that's the first thing I think of. And as dumb of a meme as that is and everything, I think that there's a lot of honesty in it, right? And I bring this subject up because it's something that I've done just a lot of personal thinking about, and then I do a lot of work in the mental health field and stuff too, right? And so I run into a lot of people dealing with stuff like depression, bipolar, anxiety disorders, OCD, different things like that. And through talking with them, you start to notice just kind of trends and patterns in the way that we think about stuff, the way that we sort of use our own intellect and patterns of thought to trick ourselves or get ourselves to believe things or like lie to ourselves, depending on what our end goals are, right? And this process isn't even always a conscious process. This process can occur unconsciously as well. And I think it's just a discussion worth having and something worth talking about, because while it's something that can be a really strong defense mechanism for us, it's also something that can lead us down into the abyss. Basically, it's something that, if left unchecked, or if we don't have the proper capacity to get outside of our own head sometimes, then we won't be able to see the forest through the trees, so to speak, right? To use an analogy. So to begin, I just want to discuss about how a lot of the times we trust our brains, and we have to, right? Now, I know that was a dumb statement, but hear me out. For a lot of people, and especially other people that I've had like comments with and stuff on this channel, a lot of you guys have come to the channel because you've been able to relate to some of the things about like being an outsider in some capacity, feeling different than other people, dealing with feelings of loneliness, dealing with feelings of not fitting in with the crowd that you're around, and trying to find your place in it and trying to find what to do about it. And because this is the case, a lot of people in these circumstances can tend to look inward, right? You can end up being your own best friend, and we should seek to know ourselves, whatever that means, right? Because that's a whole complicated thing in and of itself. But we should try to seek some level of understanding about like who and what we are as a person. And I noticed that a lot of people that I've met who are the most introspective are the people that have gone through that feeling of not fitting in before. And it makes perfect sense, right? When you're not around others, you're going to retreat into the only thing that you have. And a lot of the times, like, that's you, right? If you're somebody that really doesn't have anybody else or anything else to comfort you, then you look inside, and inside we can find a lot of comfort, right? In our own thoughts, we can sort of think things through about why people behave the way that they do, why certain situations ended up the way that they did, how we could have reacted differently, what we feel should have happened in a situation. All these thoughts can kind of cross our mind and make us feel better about what we feel is a primarily unjust situation, right? Like because I think most of us know at this point that life legitimately is not a fair game. Like, not everybody gets the same shake. Not everybody has the same opportunities. And for us to be able to cope with this, sometimes we look inside for that comfort that we're not getting from the world. And while this can be a very powerful defense mechanism, and introspection is exceedingly important and something that I feel like not a lot of people do, we also have to be careful of introspection, in that if you are your only company and you are misguided or you're going down the wrong path, then what does that mean for your health and well-being, right? And this kind of goes into the subject and the topic of like living in an echo chamber kind of thing, where if you are thinking a certain way or you have a certain belief about something, then as time goes on and you're the only person that's kind of affirming that belief, you can kind of put yourself in a feedback loop and you assume that, oh, I must be correct because I've always thought this way. It's never been confronted or nobody's ever shown you that it's wrong, even though in reality there might have been some like outside evidence or things happening in the external world that could kind of show potentially. But that's the thing, right? Like, we get so good at lying or deceiving ourselves about the stuff that we want to believe that sometimes we ignore these things, and it can happen on an unconscious level. And when this occurs, we enter into a feedback loop of incorrect thoughts sometimes, right? And some things, it can be a minor thing, right? Well, like we'll say ramen versus ramen noodles. If you say ramen noodles, I'm gonna have to ask you to leave this channel and never look back. Like just like dumb stuff like that, right? Like there's certain things where like if we're incorrect or if we get it wrong, it's not a big deal. But what happens when the things we are getting wrong are our views and basic interpretations of who we are and what we are as a person? And this is where kind of the discussion of depression and anxiety comes in, right? And recently there's been a lot of prominent suicides happening in the media, a lot of deaths and just a lot of really sad stuff going on. And I feel like now is a good time to bring this topic up and just kind of discuss a little bit about how this happens, because depression is a legitimate illness, man. It's a disease and a very dangerous thing. And one of the things that makes depression so scary is that it tricks your mind into working against itself, right? It's not like some other things that we fight against in the external world or even internally, where we have an illness and then like our body is using our white blood cells to try to fight it off. We have our immune system trying to get rid of whatever the sickness is, and then eventually, if everything's working the way it's supposed to, we get back into proper health, right? Or if we have an obstacle that we're facing in whatever situation that we're in, we figure out the intricacies of it, we figure out if there's a way around it, we get help or try to deal with the situation, and then we move past it. What makes depression so different and so much worse is that in cases of legitimate depression, the very thing that's your strongest weapon normally is the exact same thing that's working against you. The same way that we talked about using our brain to kind of comfort ourselves and get ourselves out of these messed up periods where everybody else is kind of, that we feel like everybody else is against us and our mind was the only thing we had. What do you do when your mind is the thing that's telling you you're a worthless piece of shit? What do you do when your mind is the one that's telling you that nobody cares about you, that there's no hope to get out of the situation that you're in, that people in the world would be better off if you died? That's the scariest part of depression, man, is that's what it puts into your head. And then once those are the thoughts that get internalized, once you start thinking those things over and over and over again, you guys remember how we talked about that feedback loop and everything, right? Well, once you get into that feedback loop of hearing these thoughts all the time, thinking these thoughts all the time, and then if you feel like things are happening around you that are confirming these thoughts, and that's the messed up part, right? And when you're depressed, everything happening to you or going on with you can seem like it's just confirming what you already believed about yourself, right? Like any setback, whether like you try to invite a friend out or have them come to your birthday party, they say something comes up and they can't make it. When the depressed mind doesn't think that, oh, well, they had something going on, or like, oh, they got kids, like I know they're busy and that was pretty short notice. The depressed mind is like, look, I told you he never liked you. They never want to hang out with you. Like, that was stupid of you to even ask. And then you retreat inside yourself and you start to hate yourself and hate other people too. And it's so sad and messed up the way the depressed mind tricks us like that. And so the point that I was kind of hoping to get to with this video was the fact that it's important to question your thoughts and question the things that are going on in your head. And I don't think that this is something that's natural for all of us, right? I don't think it's something that's natural for everybody. And I think that is something that you have to learn to do. There's a thing that's taught in like therapy and like counseling and stuff called like Socratic questioning, where you take a thought or a belief that you have and you present that thought or belief with a series of questions that you're looking at it, trying your best to look at it completely objectively and trying to figure out whether that belief that you hold is legitimate or if this is something that might just be a figment of your currently ill mental state. And I think this is so important to recognize the fact that our brain and our thoughts are not always correct. The stuff that you feel in the moment, the thoughts that your brain is constantly telling you, just because they're happening all the time, just because you're feeling them so much, doesn't mean that that's what's actually going on. And as far as what to do with this, we talked about the Socratic questioning, right? But this is also the importance of having a strong support system or getting therapy if it's needed as well, right? You need people around you to kind of check you. You need people to keep you honest, that when they hear a thought coming out of your mouth or hear you say something, they're not just going to automatically agree, but they'll kind of be willing to debate with you or say something to you if they're like, man, I don't know if this is really what's going on. That kind of thing is what helps keep us at an even keel. Like, people around us are the things that can help fact check us. And therapy is also an important part of this as well, right? Where like, if you feel like the environment that you're in doesn't have people that are in a healthy enough mental state or like are positive influence on you, because this can actually be the case too, right? Where if you're in a toxic environment or if you're in a situation where the people around you are not healthy themselves, they're not doing well, then they can actually make the circumstances worse. And this is where seeking professional help comes in, right? Because if you're already depressed and then you have toxic people around you telling you that you're a piece of crap, then we know what this can lead to, right? We know that that road only goes to places that aren't good. So when we talk about getting professional help, going to therapy and like seeking counseling and stuff, a lot of it's just to do a fact check on your mind to make sure that your thought process is in a place where the way that you're thinking can lead you to conclusions that are at least parallel to what's going on in reality, and that they're not figments of like your imagination or messed up self-esteem or flawed personal history. And it's something that I feel like we all need at times, right? We all need someone or some way to fact check ourselves. And going along with this too, when we talk about like meditation, yoga, and that kind of thing, one of the biggest tenets of that is not seeing the world for what you want it to be, but for what it actually is. And I think this correlates perfectly with that, in that it's a skill to learn to be able to kind of step outside of yourself and what you think, and be able to look at a situation or yourself objectively, and without entering your own personal biases for good or bad, right? Like, our ego can sort of worm its way into everything that we do, and it's a legitimate skill and mindfulness exercise, to learn how to take a situation or take a thought that we have, break it down, and truly analyze it for what's happening, instead of adding all the years of baggage and garbage that we have going through our head, right? It's a legitimate skill. So with that being said, man, we'll get ready to finish off here, but I just wanted to talk with you guys about that because I feel like it's super important. Don't be afraid to talk to others. Don't be afraid to get help if you need it. And don't feel like your brain is the ultimate what word am I looking for here, guys? It's not the ultimate keeper of truth. Your brain can be the arbiter of many lies depending on trauma, the environment, and what you've personally gone through. So your brain can lie to you, man. And that's okay. We just have to learn how to calibrate it and get it back on track, right? So I'll talk to you guys in the next one. Be safe, and I appreciate you listening.